you like to do it.
I just wanted you to
acting, you know.
Yeah,
just,
I would be
making fun of
skeptical and stuff. And they were
Oh, sorry, man.
because
Sorry,
isn't
sorry.
that a graven image?
Graven image would mean one of these beings that's opposed to God, but it's always been held that, you know, all the ones that are in God's hierarchy, making things that point back to God's generally seen as okay.
So
back
like
to the early church, back to the ancient Jews.
I feel like the Hebrews are so edgy because they did the whole snake thing, and the snake was directly opposed to God in the garden, and yet they made a bronze snake for the people to look at to save them. Do you think that's a graven image?
I would generally defer. He would know more than I would.
Well, God told Moses to do that, so God contradicted himself. It sounds like.
I wish I could hear it.
Do you
I don't know why.
do you ever
I
have
can't hear it.
concerns about the Bible being having contradictions and then probably not being true? Has that ever crossed your mind, Catholic?
So I would.
Out of my hand, I left my
because of all the like cult stuff. And then,
guy, you know, you have a lot of. Can I ask something?
Well, because I can understand that, like, if you have a change of heart and you stop behaving certain ways, and you can.
Do we lose the other viewers? Yeah, I think we lost the other viewers here because I was taking too long to get set up. Dang. Please join when you can, and you know.
Hold on. It's weird. So I opened this up with Firefox. Wait a second. Why won't it? I'm in Firefox right now, and it says Firefox and Chrome will open it. Your browser doesn't support StreamYard's technology.
Just try Chrome.
I mean, it could be that I have. I need to update. That's so weird. Okay. Now, I did the same thing with Chrome, except it says the browser has blocked your mic and camera. And then it says go to the camera. Let's try something else.
Yeah, just allow mic and camera, but then turn camera off.
Yeah, but it doesn't. It's not allowing me to do that. It doesn't show on my browser this camera icon. It's just the camera icons. Oh, wait a second. Like, it's the camera thing is supposed to be next to the star. I'm looking at the star. I don't see any camera icon. Let me see. Let me click join with. Let's see what's going on here. Join without. Can I join without mic and camera and then turn it on?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, name. So I have to put a name, right?
Yeah, what's your name? Blustering.
Okay. Hold on. Let me turn this up.
Can you hear me? X. I cannot hear you. Wait, try now. Can you?
Hello?
Oh, I hear you. Nice.
Okay, I don't know what happened. Here we go. Okay,
All right.
very good. So here we are. Yeah, I figured it out. Okay. Oh. What is
Okay.
that image? Okay, anyways.
Yeah. So, okay. YouTube is mission territory. We know that. So, like any mission, like St. Dominic and with the Albigensians, you got to go into the town square and debate the loudest people, and hopefully the crowd starts to notice that maybe they don't know everything they say they know.
Right. Try not to deform your soul in the process. So I don't need to have those two things opened, actually. You're going to have it playing here, right?
Yeah. It'll play here.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah. What is this private chat? Oh, that's you.
So you're gonna play this, okay?
Yeah. So I think so again, I've got a bunch of stuff lined up here.
Yeah.
To answer the question, why are the Gospels anonymous? People always say the Gospels are anonymous. Atheists say it like it's it's brute historical fact. And I think what we'll see is what they do is they don't actually give any evidence for it. They appeal to this consensus of biblical scholars, inspired by the 1800s Germans, right?
Right.
And then they'll give some. It'll be interesting because in a few of these, I actually get people to, if not fully accept it, at least question it pretty seriously.
Wouldn't it go contrary to the entire sort of universal Christian communities across languages and cultures from Ireland to India, liturgical tradition to consider them anonymous, as well as manuscript tradition, as well as just commentarial tradition and historical tradition, Christian historians, commentators, homilists, just like all the literature and all the evidence we have without
Exactly. That's why I think it's such a good thing to start with atheists. Is it's so historically grounded. It's a brute fact. You cannot, you cannot deny the Gospels were written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and say you're doing anything other than speculating on top of the historical record, because the historical record is among the clearest for anything. There's so many
in a rather multifaceted and comprehensive way, right?
Yeah. No matter what route you take, is it witness of the early church fathers? It's very early, and it's unanimous.
Right.
Witness of the manuscript evidence itself. It's slightly less early. A lot of that starts in like the 200s, but it's unanimous from Spain to India. And not only is it unanimous, they aren't even floating around blank. Every single manuscript we have, that's a full manuscript, has according to whoever on top.
Right.
It might not even say the gospel. A bunch don't even say the gospel according to Mark. They'll just say according to Mark.
Right.
And again, Spain to India, it's all unanimous.
The liturgical sort of tradition of liturgical proclamation,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's and then the last thing is I think the internal evidence really supports it too. That's gonna be a harder one to get atheists on, but especially Luke is so easy because Luke, which Luke is half of the book Luke Acts, because Gospel of Luke and Acts are the same book originally. That is it's hard to read that and think Luke didn't write it.
Right. But okay, but yeah. So right. Okay.
Yeah, and as we jump in, be sure to mash that like button and share with your friends, because right now we have 0 viewers, but we can carve this up later if we need to. First, this is one of the bigger atheist streamers. He streams every day. Normally he gets a bunch of people on to, we're going to actually start not with the Bible section, because when I join, he's actually trying to convince this Protestant guy that he has psychosis, because this Protestant guy is trying to show him how he had a vision that demons left his body. And Joel reads the Bible is going to be like, yeah, you just have psychosis, man. Let me know if you want to pause it and if you have anything to say. But yeah, it starts with this Protestant guy, and then we get into talking about the manuscripts.
For the record, do you think he has psychosis, or do you think? Because I mean, you just never know, you know. I mean, either way.
Right. You never know. But the biggest thing, just watch how this guy approaches it. I think this is one of the more honest atheists. He Googles my claim during the call, and literally he doesn't double down. This is what you'll see this atheist will do, and some of the other atheists will do, is they don't double down and say it's anonymous. They'll just move on to, well, who cares? They're making crazy claims anyway. And the second they say who cares, they're making crazy claims anyway, they're admitting the gospels are not necessarily anonymous. Yeah, here's a let me know if you have comments and we can pause it, because I want to get your reactions.
Sure.
You can say, all those demons left me. I can understand that metaphor, but you're saying like physically humanoid animals just came out of your body.
Yeah.
Humanoid
That's a
animals.
problem. Finally,
What?
Why did he say what? Was he redefining demons as did he say humanoid animals?
That's what this Protestant guy is saying happened to him. Is a bunch of humanoid animals came out of his mouth, and that's how he knew the demons left his body.
So he's just kind of making like, does he? So, but he's not being theologically. He's not even attempting to be theologically precise within the parameters of traditional.
I think he's Joel reads the Bible as just one of these like internet atheists. I don't think he's necessarily being the most precise.
Sure. But he's saying you had humanoid animals. I mean, I'm not quite sure what that's. Did he mean humanoid? I mean,
Should I go back earlier? You want me to go back earlier?
I just thought that was a strange caricature of demons. He could have whatever. It doesn't matter. But go on. It was just odd. Yeah. He just presupposes that there's. Okay, go on.
do you think that this is like the normal sort of psychosis that people who are religious experience finally Catholic?
On the other hand,
and Catholic, hey, sorry, can I ask something, bro?
Well,
To the guy that is Catholic, I think.
What?
I was gonna say
He's Catholic, yeah.
Okay, and
being demonic.
you have a lot of.
You think he was actually you believe in genuine like demonic possession where humanoid animals come out of people's bodies?
Humanoid.
I would not make the jump into the humanoid animals part. Yeah, that's
well, no, I would think
where-
that's definitely a delusion, right? Like that's like some sort of crazy. Well, I shouldn't say crazy, but some sort of hallucination.
Can I ask something?
One criticism of.
But I think my concern is that like because of the religious iconography, this plays into his and feeds into his delusions and his mental health, and so now these things seem reasonable stuff.
So,
and you're part of that, Catholic. That's what I would be concerned about.
Pause really quick.
I'm the Catholic.
What is the individual? He's like Eastern Orthodox?
There's an atheist. The atheist guy's on screen, and then there's a Protestant guy who's probably non-denominational.
So what's the iconography about? Because that sounds like more of an Eastern Orthodox thing.
Oh, he's using the word iconography just to mean like images generally.
Oh, okay, interesting. So this guy kind of has somewhat of an idiosyncratic usage or definition of terms, but anyways, okay.
I think a normal American layperson's. I don't think it's that idiosyncratic.
Interesting. Okay.
Guy, you have a lot of idols in your church, bro. That's not right. You should. You're supposed to teach the truth, bro. There's power out there. There's evil.
You know
and
where
there's
else there are idols?
good.
Calling you out.
You know where else there are idols?
Where?
In the old temple, there were statues of angels and stuff with the ark, right? And
That's
told them
true.
to make it.
Pause.
Yeah, but they don't.
I wouldn't have called it idols. Finally, Catholic. I don't know if I would call them. We have to be precise with our terminology, right?
I think you have to. If you're too precise to your terminology, you'll lose it in the medium, because like you gotta. They will not give you. They don't give you 2 paragraphs to make a point when you're in these things. It's
okay. Because
I'm saying
that, yeah.
If you say Catholics have idols, here's another place that has idols according to your definition of idols.
According to your right,
yeah, which I think is the implied asterisk there.
Right.
You worship him
He
right
said,
now.
"Make
when
no."
Jesus
That's
Told them to
true.
make it. Did God
That's
command
true.
Yeah,
them to make
but they don't. But you worship him
He
right
said,
now.
"Make
When
no
Jesus
graven."
came,
Hey, that's a good
when Jesus,
contradiction. Hold on, Jack. That's a good contradiction you
uh-huh.
just found, finally, Catholic, because God said, "Don't make any graven images," but then He said, "Go make some seraphim or cherubim or whatever." So did He contradict Himself?
No, that doesn't represent
I'm
himself.
asking
That's the way he
Catholic,
wanted it.
Jack. I'm asking Catholic.
Oh, sorry, man.
Because
Sorry.
isn't that a graven image?
Graven image would mean one of these beings that's opposed to God. But it's always been held that, all the ones that are in God's hierarchy, making things that point back to God's generally seen as okay.
So,
Back
like,
to the early church, back to the ancient Jews.
I feel like the Hebrews are
It's on the
so
whole plan.
edgy because they did the whole snake thing, and the snake was directly opposed to God
He's referencing like the bronze serpent.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
in the garden, and yet they made a bronze snake for the people to look at to save them. Do you think that's a graven image?
I would generally defer to Moses there. He would know more than I would.
Well, God told Moses to do that, so God.
So I mean, there's okay. So I mean, there's a lot of things here. So I think graven image. We'd have to look at the commentaries, but pretty much refers to I like some sort of typically some sort of I think typically statues, sometimes maybe that were at the center of worship that were literally considered gods. And I think
Right. And that's why the distinction I made there was if something's in God's hierarchy and points to God as the top guy, that's not a graven image.
So for example, if you want to understand where a lot of stuff is coming, all you have to do is like this part might get us in trouble, but kind of like go to a Hindu temple. Right. If you've ever been to a Hindu temple, there's usually some statue or painting or image that is meant to represent God. That's at the center of the worship, of the ceremonial worship, and various sacrifices and offerings throughout the day and so on. And for the ignorant, I think they actually sometimes think it is somehow like there's no like non-identification. They're not necessarily cognizant of a theology of, from image to archetype, but some of them kind of like might like the worst, most vulgar kind of idolatry is very crude and grossly materialistic and kind of doesn't see it like make any kind of a distinction and just sees that as the god and kind of and then for the more maybe intellectual classes, they might have a distinction between image and archetype, but they kind of involve themselves so much with those images and statues in the way they ritually worship. They're so viscerally and intimately, and you could see why the unlearned person, like in a temple or like, might not make a distinction. Whereas in never has it been in Christian worship that there is anything like that. Not even toward the Eucharist. That same kind of it's something. And the Eucharist is no statue or graven image, But anyways, like I don't know if you've seen them, but they'll like put all sorts of things on the statues, like honey.
Yeah.
It's a very visceral, sensual kind of like veneration of the statue, as if it is somehow like the distinction collapses to a degree that even like when you see East Orthodox venerating icons, it's nothing like that. Yes. Nothing like that. Yeah, but go on. Yeah,
in persona demoniac or whatever.
Something like that. Yeah. But anyways, go on. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think I do think the point with what is going on with the bronze serpent is that a graven image. It's the bronze serpent is one of the weirder images in the Old Testament. Yeah. I mean, the same way of Moses' staff turning to a snake. Like the imagery around snakes, especially in the early part of the Bible, like in not Genesis, but in Exodus and Leviticus or whatever, it is surprising God and Moses use the image of the snake. But
yeah, no, it's interesting. But I think there's I think it's interesting to explore the various meanings of it. But I think, I mean, and it's used in medicine, right? I
If anything, that helps the Catholic case, right? It makes whatever this command is about the graven image. If Moses immediately makes this bronze snake, whatever this graven image command is, does not mean what you're assuming it means, Protestant guy.
Oh, of course. So does the cross, which was always a universal image, and the universal tradition of relics, reliquaries of all different sorts. And also, as I think Saint Athanasius, the argument he makes, was it him that made it, or I think it was one that was generally made of just look the incarnation itself, and the fact that the Word became flesh, and sort of the Word became words as well, So, I mean, you're thinking of Christ in an image form in your mind, in your imagination, when you're reading Scripture, when it's being recited and proclaimed, and it's being represented in one manner or another physically when he was here, but that his body is still here, but obviously in a glorified form, not in an ordinary kind of earthly form. So I mean, all those arguments go on and on. So yeah, I mean, it's a crude, unhistorical form of argumentation that was categorically rejected by ecumenical councils sort of across East and West definitively. But so it's sad that Protestants still kind of fall into this, but go on. Yeah.
Contradicted himself, it sounds like. Do you ever have concerns about the Bible being having contradictions and then probably not being true? Has that ever crossed your mind, Catholic?
So I would say on the Catholic's relationship to Scripture tends to be pretty different than Protestants or when atheists read.
It's allowed to be it's allowed to be a complete mess as long as the Pope says it makes sense.
I would say, to nuance it slightly, it's like the Bible's inspired by God but written by man.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you like, even in the Gospels, the hour Jesus is crucified differs slightly from gospel to gospel. Right.
Can I say one thing though, really quick?
Which is like what you'd expect, and makes it here I'm definitely granting him slightly more just to not derail the conversation. Let it press.
Sure. One thing about the snake, though. So as you know, I think that was an Egyptian image that Moses appropriates, and that I think, and clearly by its usage later in medicine as a medicinal image, was understood by this. You're taking something that's supposed to be the source of death, which becomes a source of life. So it becomes a Christological image as well with the crucifixion, So there's a lot there with that the church fathers commented on, and that was kind of understood, I think, by many. Down the.
Yeah, I'm sure we could do a whole video on just all the interpretation of the bronze.
Sure. Yeah.
More authentic eyewitness that it differs slightly because our Jesus is crucified differs slightly from gospel to gospel. Right. Yeah, and which is like what you'd expect, and makes it a more authentic eyewitness that it differs slightly because if an eyewitness is exactly the same.
But they weren't eyewitnesses; they were people writing after the fact. But I'm going to let you go, Jack.
That'd be an interesting one to dig into.
But they did, like, they weren't eyewitnesses. They were anonymous authors that didn't claim to be eyewitnesses. But let me ask you this:
where's your evidence? Where's your evidence it was anonymous?
We don't know who wrote them.
How do you know that? Why are you saying that?
Because it was just attributed to them by church fathers.
But why? So that's interesting. Why would he seems to just imply everywhere irrationality, just kind of accidental, random irrationality, that everything just has no meaning. Nothing could have any meaning. He's not even trying to find meaning in it or ask meaningful questions. There's just this presupposition of denial, like, demons are humanoid animals, which is an totally just impossible definition, because by definition they're spirits. If he meant they're kind of like humanoid animal spirits or something, we try to say like they're humanoid spirits.
I think the humanoid animals thing is explaining the Protestant guy's image. Like we could go back earlier and get to the humanoid animals, but the Protestant guy talks about the humanoid animals.
But you know, okay, that was that's so okay, interesting. I thought he was just I just thought he just came up with that terminology on his own. Okay,
no,
but
the Protestant guy is describing like animals in his mouth that look like humans or whatever. He comes up with the terminology, but it's based on the Protestant guy's description of what's coming out of him.
Okay, weird. Okay, yeah. So, in any case, but okay, I see. So, but why does he just assume that church fathers, and we're talking about figures that were in living memory of the apostles, that were right disciples of the apostles or disciples of their disciples? We're talking about figures that were, closely connected to the early Christian community and its diasporic dispersion, if you will. And why would they just all unanimously, randomly, and kind of irrationally make such attributions, and it would hold? Like there seems to be this, like, am I wrong to say that there just seems to be this kind of unthinking kind of attribution of irrational randomness? Like why doesn't he ask the question, why did the church fathers, even if that's his assumption, why does he ask the question, well, what was their reasoning or grounding? Like how come there's no charity of interpretation of, like, well, did they have a good reason? How did that happen? Why did that happen? Why did they do that? There seems to just be like this presumption of absurdity or rationality. You see what I mean?
Yeah, they're definitely begging the question. I agree. It's right. You can't start with, we know the Gospels are false because someone added names, right?
And those were early scholars. I mean, these were early scholars of the scriptures. I mean, many of them were extremely systematic and diligent scholars. Think of like Origen, Jerome, and so many others. Like some of these were some of the most learned men and cultivated men and well-trained men in philosophy and law and rhetoric and of the ancient world. You think they weren't doing, like, what are you studying these people? Are you studying their biographies, their histories? Are you reading their writings? Like you think they're just making, they just all have to be making things up and agreeing? Like it's strange that he wouldn't consider them just as scholarly as, say, a modern scholar. They were the scholars and the academics of their time period. You can't just write off what they're saying.
Yeah.
But anyways,
you should debate one of these guys. I think it's a.
No, I just want them, because if they have a look, like, using reason is a very noble thing, but one doesn't have to have like a pretense about, like, formulate an identity around sort of being reason personified. That's a heavy bar to place on oneself, where you're going to frequently and constantly fall short. But I just think that, I think that he needs to kind of expand his own reasoning powers and sort of just be kind of asking more questions here. But I don't know this guy's history, if he came from the Christian world and is just kind of disaffected and like he has something to lose.
Most of these guys are just atheists who then like got heartbroken by a girl or got too into the weird stuff on the internet. Like, I don't. It's rare that there's some abstract, like, person that knows philosophy and reason the most. They just normally don't like religion.
It would be interesting if he became more neutral, because I want to know, what does he have to lose? Like, what, as an atheist, it's really interesting kind of Pascalian question. What does he have to lose by, like, kind of like granting some more grounds to Christianity? Like, what is the ultimate loss? What's his major fear? But it would be interesting if he just, because it seems to me like he would have everything to gain and nothing to lose, like kind of like Pascal's wager. And just, I think he'd make a very strong case. He had everything to win, nothing, like, that the gains would far exceed any conceivable loss. So I don't know what the fear and resistance comes from so much as, but I'd wish he would just be a little bit more neutral and ask some deeper questions, do some deeper research. But anyways, go on.
Yeah.
Like there's not some sort of like reason to believe it was somebody specific, is there? I'm just going by the scholarship here.
Some of the scholars
counter that every single manuscript. Yeah, I think the scholarship. There's some people like Brant Petrie, which I know you're going to say he's Catholic, so I take it with a grain of salt. But the argument that is relatively scholarly would go, if you look at every manuscript we have, we do not have a manuscript where the 4 Gospels are not attributed to the same 4 authors. So it is outside of the historical record to say they were anonymous. The historical record always has them back to the very, very earliest days, attributed to the 4 evangelists.
What does that mean?
And also, if you're gonna make up authors,
What was the last thing you said?
like, are these signed by these people? What do you mean by attribute? Like when they decided these were
written on the top is.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't decided in any one spot, right? From Spain to India, every manuscript that we have, back to the 100s, has the same name on top. So unless it was
PK just told me that Raymond Brown, who is a Catholic scholar, says that they were anonymous. So I don't know.
In scholarly circles, you'll see.
So scholarly consensus will say is that they were anonymous. Yeah. But even if they weren't anonymous, Matthew,
for the last 100 years,
like John Mark or whatever, wasn't an eyewitness to this stuff, right?
Right. John Mark is just a guy that followed some around. Yeah.
Right. And wasn't Matthew and Luke based on Mark? Is that how that works?
That's a theory.
It does seem like Matthew had Mark in front of him and then added to it. Yeah.
So then Matthew, was Matthew an eyewitness, and he copied off of a non-eyewitness? Is that the logic that you would use?
The logic I would use would be, if you are gonna attribute something to an apostle, you'd pick Peter or Thomas, or when we see the fake ones, that's who you see. You wouldn't pick the tax collector who has no speaking lines, right?
That's interesting.
Why would he write one? Well, he's one of the few guys. What did you say?
I never even thought about that. I just never even thought about the argument. So, but really quick about the whole controversy about Matthew, I defer to the traditional view on that. And I think that they come up with all these complicated theories for the new view, but we don't have to go into all that. But the argument you made right there, it just never. I don't think that ever occurred to me. Because I never think about this. This was never something I much problematized or thought about the titles of the Gospels, right? But yeah, it just never occurred to me why Peter. That was an interesting point that just never occurred to me. I don't know. Is that like a pretty commonplace in this sort of discussion?
It's not the most common, but you'll see it pretty often. Yeah,
that's curious. But go on, yeah.
Yeah, when you have fake Gospels, the fake Gospels will name themselves Gospel of Thomas, Gospel of Peter. But you wouldn't have named a fake Gospel of Luke. Like, who's Luke? Like
Mary Magdalene, Gnostic, also Mary Magdalene, and okay, that's quite interesting. Okay, anyways, go. I never thought about that, but yeah.
So what do Luke and Matthew especially have in common? Well, it would seem like Matthew, if he's a tax collector, would be the guy to write it down because he'd be illiterate. He's not the most important in the story. The only thing that makes Matthew special is he'd be the one that could write.
Yeah, or what I mean. That's why do you? Okay, this is kind of just because I've never thought about this. But I mean, has anyone ever asked the question? Why wasn't I just wow? Okay, I'm just thinking on my feet. I just never occurred to me. So, what would distinguish, like, let's say, the Gospel of John from the letters of John? Yeah, what do you think is the distinction there?
Well, Gospel of John, I think, is a different case because John is one of the more important disciples.
Yeah.
I also would accept that John wrote both the letters of John and the Gospel of John and Revelation.
Well, yeah, sure, but I'm just curious, like, what would you like? So, like, I'm saying, like, why wasn't there a Gospel of Paul? Kind of like, is it just because he wasn't like a strict apostle in terms of historical eyewitness apostle?
Oh yeah. There wouldn't really be a gospel according to Paul. But Luke wasn't an eyewitness either. Luke was some guy that followed Paul around. So almost the Gospel of Luke is the Paul gospel, right?
Interesting. Okay.
The way Mark is actually the Peter gospel because Mark is said to have written the thing that I find most convincing.
Oh, no, it just became clear in my head. Sorry, it became clear in my head. But go on, yeah.
The thing I find the most convincing is that, and here's I guess the genuine order of the Gospels of who wrote what when. I would say the first one written was Matthew in Aramaic, wrote the original Gospel.
Interesting.
Mark wrote the original one in Greek based on all the lectures of Peter. Matthew then hears about this one in Greek, sees it going viral, has his in Aramaic, and he's like, okay, I'm going to translate my Aramaic one into Greek. All the stuff I wrote about that's also in the Mark one, and maybe Mark even had this Aramaic one, I don't know. I'm going to make a definitive Greek one and going to publish that.
I've never heard. That's actually really interesting. Is that written about? Because it sounds quite plausible. I mean, it's quite an interesting.
The early church generally held that Matthew did not write his originally in Greek, and he wrote it originally in Aramaic.
That I knew.
And a lot of Bible scholars will say, if you read Matthew, there's turns of phrase in Matthew that don't make sense in Greek, but would have made sense in Aramaic.
That's fascinating.
I can only trust the scholars there. I don't actually know that one.
That's fascinating. Anyways, yeah, that's okay. I never thought something as mundane as who wrote the Gospels. It's so interesting how it just. I don't think the average person throughout most of human history asked the question, did the gospel writers not write the gospel? But I didn't know so much ink could spill over such a simple and so sort of like counterintuitive question somewhat, you know?
Yeah. And then here's what gets more complicated. So Luke then has everything and then follows Paul around. And actually the Gospel of Luke is only half of the book. Do you know this? Where Luke originally was not Luke by itself. It was Luke plus Acts were one book.
I've heard this. I don't know how they came up with it, but I've certainly heard this all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the Gospel of John is weird. And I think the weirdest thing about the Gospel of John is that there's no demonic possessions in it. There's a ton of things in the other Gospels that just aren't even in John. Right. I spent a long time thinking of this where I'm like, if John was authentic, why would he leave all this out? You would think he would have lucked into the same stuff. And you know what my opinion is after long discussion on this?
What's that?
I think John has some line near the end where he's like, if all the books about everything Jesus did were written, it'd be enough to fill the whole world, right?
Right.
Combine that with the fact these Gospels are not being read cover to cover like a novel. They're being read one section at a time in church services.
They're being, you could say read. I would say they're being recited, sung,
proclaimed.
Yeah.
So my impression of how we got John, especially given this, there's not a single demonic possession, even though the synoptic gospels show a ton of it. I think John had the other gospels in front of him, and he's like, these are great. However, there's so many stories not in here. I'm going to write a book just of all the other stories I know about that didn't make it into the other synoptics.
Yeah. I mean, that all sounds very reasonable, yeah.
I also think there's a few times in the Gospel of John that if you read it in this lens, it kind of reads like John is giving a commentary, his own personal eyewitness commentary on the other Gospels. The most explicit one is when he says, John was the first one to the tomb, but Peter got there and went in first. So he's like, so Peter wasn't there first. I was there first. He just went in first. And he's almost like he's making a commentary on Luke or Matthew.
Right. Yeah. So okay. Should we
let's continue. Guys, it's actually literate, right? Because he's a tax collector.
Yeah, but he copied off of Mark.
The argument would go, Mark wrote the first one, starts floating around, and then he, Matthew has Mark. It's like, well, this is good, but I have more to add to this, and let me make the definitive one. And then Luke, who then follows Paul around and personally knows John Mark. I think Luke, you can make one of the strongest cases that Luke is actually the author of Luke. But again, Luke doesn't even know Jesus. Luke knows Paul, who then met all the apostles, who then knew Jesus. So.
Yeah, so like I would say that there's a good reason to say we don't have an eyewitness account, right? Unless you want to say Matthew, some of Matthew would be an eyewitness account, possibly, but most people think that the whatever they're called, the Gospels are anonymous. So it's like
I agree. Most people think that, but appealing to consensus is almost like a Catholic appealing to the Church Fathers, right? Like,
yeah, but I think it's fair because I'm appealing to the consensus of people who study this. Is that not fair?
Hold on. Can we say one thing about this?
I mean, yeah.
Why does he go on to say why he thinks, other than some sort of alleged consensus? I mean, the problem with consensus is we're talking about something that's in dynamic flux. Consensus is a mutable thing and could shift from quote unquote generation to generation. It kind of matters like I mean, and then consensus is an interesting. I mean, I wonder how you would even determine whether there's an actual consensus, because I mean, there's a lot of people writing in a lot of different languages all over the world, and then how you would then sort of demarcate different units of time to kind of like then scan and map the variabilities of consensus. Anyways, like I think we should be careful with some of these this kind of invocation of consensus, unless you can really kind of rigorously show that. But really what's more important is the reasons, not necessarily so much the consensus. And
that's the point I'm about to make to him too here,
because you think if these people really believed, and it's clear they did, that there was a divine revelation that broke into the world magnificently, it would be strange if none of the people that were eyewitnesses to that wrote anything down. That would be unusual, it seems to me. So why would he think that'd be reasonable?
I mean, their case would go like, oh, all the apostles thought the world was about to end. They didn't understand that the end times weren't coming in the next 10 years. And so they didn't write stuff down because they had too much urgency.
Sounds like almost a conspiracy theory, but anyways.
It is I think most modern atheists are actually conspiracy theorists because of how solid the historical record is. Right. I think there's more evidence that Jesus came back from the dead than there is that we went to the moon. So yeah, I'm about to make the same point to him here. I think.
Like, what are you appealing to? One guy, or that you want it to be, or because the Bible tells me so? I'm appealing
to if you line up every manuscript we have, like, because we have a lot of manuscripts going back. You can find them all online. Be like the actual old documents we have from the 100s, 200s, 300s. None of them are anonymous, and then the witness. So the fact none of them are anonymous is a pretty big data point. And it's not like they were all from one area, from Spain to India.
So you're saying that written on the top of the Gospels, the oldest copies of the manuscripts, we have Gospel of Matthew written on the top of it.
Yeah, unless it's like the random ripped up pages, which sometimes you'll find a random one-off page ripped. The oldest like full book, yeah.
Do the manuscripts of the Gospels have the names of? Do the oldest manuscripts of the Gospels have the names of the authors written on them? ? But the earliest existent manuscripts of the Gospels have titles attributing them to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The titles consistently found in the oldest surviving manuscripts suggesting the Gospels were not originally anonymous. While some scholars argue that the titles might have been added later, there is no evidence of any anonymous manuscripts of the Gospels. The traditional attributions are also supported by the early church. Well, that's where they named them.
The early church is written later, right? Like, we have manuscripts older than the early church witness. The early church witness is like 120 AD.
This is my question, though. Okay. Why is the consensus that they are anonymous then?
Because if they're actually eyewitnesses, it's hard not to think Jesus is God. If they're actually eyewitnesses.
I don't buy that. I don't buy that would be the motivation. Like,
could you pause for a second?
Because I know that.
So, I mean, it's just this eyewitness questions. It's interesting how I don't know how I didn't see the whole conversation, but how it come to be kind of so fixated on this because,
well, you saw the whole conversation regarding the Gospels. Everything before you saw that was just him talking to the Protestant guy about the demons.
Because here's the thing: it seems to be that. I mean, this is without denying. I mean, it seems to me that even if they weren't, even if just theoretically speaking, the Gospels were not written by direct eyewitnesses. If they were written by, close associates of direct eyewitnesses, like the disciples of the apostles themselves, like their closest disciples, like how would that suddenly be like let's say for this individual, something that would kind of problematize it so much more as it, you know what I mean?
I do think there's a lot more that you can let in if you do that. Like you were saying, oh, John didn't write the Gospel of John. Instead, the John community 3 generations later wrote the Gospel of John, and all of a sudden, all this
push
legend,
that part. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, all this legend creeps in, and you can't actually take anything like you just can't take anything literally.
Yeah. If you push that far ahead, I mean, but if it's just like, you know, within, if it just, you know, if it's just sort of a disciple of a disciple, not like, yeah, the community 3 generations. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, the more you stretch it, the worse it gets. But it seems like he wants everything to hang on this eyewitness, as if eyewitnesses are always perfect. Like this eyewitness thing is sort of not enough, right? I mean, we all know that eyewitness is not necessarily just in and of itself some sort of definitive point. Like I think you'd have to bring other, like, so just as establishing an eyewitness by itself would not suddenly make, like, bring something to some sort of absolute certainty. Someone not being an eyewitness, but just being like a you know, a disciple of an eyewitness would not reduce it to just absolute doubt. But you have to have other categories.
Yeah, but I think if they are eyewitnesses and you're a Bible scholar who spends 10 years staring at them, it's hard not to believe all of it. You know, the only way you can be a Bible scholar and not believe all the traditional things is to say it's not an eyewitness and half of it's legend.
Got you. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And there's some interesting. This video is almost over here too, by the way.
Yeah. Okay.
From inside the cult, you do that because I was in the cult, so I know that sort of persecution complex.
4 options, right?
What's that?
4 options. The 4 options, right? Liar, lunatic, Lord, or legend. Jesus is one of those, right? Mm-hmm. He's either a legend, a liar, a lunatic, or he's God.
I never heard the 4th one,
right?
Wow.
Yeah.
The easiest one to say is a legend, where we don't actually know anything about him. All came through these early, you know, illiterate fishermen. Right. Who knows, right?
Or fiction, by the way. There's also fiction, which I guess.
I mean, legend is fiction,
legend,
right?
is, but legend is like legendized real guy, but like there could be like complete and utter fiction as well.
Oh, come on, man.
But anyway. I think you can't really. If you want to appeal to the scholarly consensus is Jesus was a real historical figure,
right? But then again, we don't appeal to that anymore.
I mean, you were appealing that a minute ago, right?
Right, and you told me I wasn't allowed to, so I'm going to appeal to.
No, that's not just the scholarly.
I've got a guy for you about
historical by Roman and Jewish historians. I mean, that's okay. He's just being funny. But anyways, yeah.
Well, no, you'll hear this. It's one of the weirdest things I found when, you know, in the mission territory that is YouTube. On YouTube, the Jesus is never, you know, Jesus was never born and Jesus is not a real historical figure. That is the assumed stance of atheists online. I'm shocked because, like, I've never met someone in person that thinks this. I know no scholars that think this, but, you know, 90% plus of atheists I have met online think Jesus wasn't a real person.
That's curious. Okay. I mean, I saw some Protestant. I didn't watch the video, but he was like, "Oh, Muhammad wasn't real," and that was like his whole, I don't know, homily or something. Some evangelical in Los Angeles is like, I don't think we need to go there.
Oh yeah, I think Muhammad was real and he was a pedophile.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know if they would have viewed it that way, but I mean, from, you know, some pretty solid ancient law from Roman law, right? Yeah, I mean, from ancient Roman law, that would have been the case, right?
Yeah, this will get us demonetized.
What?
We'll get us demonetized.
Okay, sorry, go on. Yeah,
this will get our 0 view stream demonetized.
Right. Sorry, go
on. Okay. Why Jesus is historical? Have you heard of Josephus?
Yeah, that's an interpolation that was added after the fact.
So new stuff that's come out, it's actually the English is a mistranslation. So the English interpolation that everyone thought was interpolation. It's actually a hit piece on Jesus. If you read the actual Greek, it's actually saying, Jesus was this madman who did, magic tricks. The word that gets translated as miracles is the same word Josephus uses for like the Egyptian magicians with Moses.
I think,
It's like, it's actually
I have a friend. Have you ever heard of Christ Before Jesus?
Even the Talmud, even the Jews won't deny the existence. Even his Jewish enemies won't deny his existence. Like, what are these guys talking about?
Yeah, and literally Josephus's brother-in-law
Was
his dad was present. His dad is like Caiaphas or whatever.
Yeah. It's wild. Yeah.
Josephus personally knew the girl who danced next to the head of John the Baptist.
Yeah, he was like an elite.
He was hobnobbing with all those guys. When he writes about Jesus getting killed, Josephus says, he doesn't say the head Jews. He says the head guys from among us.
Do they know that Jesus and Mary are mentioned in the Talmud of the Jews?
I think they start to discount writing very quickly. Like they don't stomach much. I heard, you'll see in some of these later videos, if we go through more of them, they will literally say, oh, it was written like 40 years later, therefore you can't trust it. I'm like, what do you mean 40? You can't write something 40 years later? One of them literally said, you can't trust Paul because Paul is written too late. That's like saying you can't trust something about George Bush from now,
I hope one of the most interesting things about Christ and Christianity is that he came in the heart of history. Like he came when history had become a long established science. Like we're like way beyond even Herodotus at that point, like we have like solid Roman historians.
There's this guy is the most sober and academic of all these. Like you're going to be livid when you hear the later atheists. Right. There's people that start bringing up like, well, Tacitus says Nero got resurrected. Do you think Nero came back?
Oh, okay. Got you.
There's some fun ones. Yeah.
Right.
I'm not. No.
Christ Before Jesus. He's my friend Jaron, and he has this book called Christ Before Jesus, where they do data science. They call it data science, but I call it data science, where it's stylometric analysis, and they do that on the text, and they do it on the Greek text. They can do it on Greek, and so they find through stylometric analysis that it's an interpolation, and that's the Greek. They don't even worry about it.
There's a guy at Oxford who just did the same thing, who came the other way, and he said he thinks it's a hit piece, not interpolation. And the other reason it might be interpolation.
What's that guy's name? It's so funny that there's a guy at Oxford.
Yeah, it literally, I forgot his name. It's something Smith or Stewart or some generic name.
All right. Well, I'll definitely buy into that because you just said it for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's worth looking into. I'm not saying you'd have to.
Yeah, you should check out the book Christ Before Jesus, because he says that Jesus never ever.
Do you see this comment? Bro, it was got awkward, bro. Trust me, bro. It's like, yeah, no,
Oh, man.
Yeah. You can reference scholarly.
Why did he say it was funny that it was a guy at Oxford? I didn't quite catch that.
He just thought it was funny that I'm referencing some scholarly work, and I couldn't name who did it. Like some guy at Oxford was on my latest.
Oh, okay, right, got you.
Yeah. Now, if you want the Oxford guy Josephus, who is it? What I say his name was Smith or Stewart. Yeah, it's this guy, Tom Schmidt. And he's going on all the major yeah. In his case he makes, which I was getting into there a little bit, is just that Josephus is actually insulting Jesus. And so two things. One is mistranslated. Josephus actually insulting Jesus. And two, none of the early church fathers reference Josephus as something good. They're like, yeah, he kind of knew about Jesus, but ignore him. Therefore, the interpolation is genuine. It's just a genuine thing that's meant to insult Jesus, which then all of a sudden means we have authentic testimony that Jesus was said to have lived, died, preached, had followers. They said he came back from the dead, did miracles. We have independent eyewitness of the Bible of some guy saying Jesus did all of this, or at least it's claimed that he did all of this. Josephus doesn't believe it, which the fact Josephus doesn't believe it makes it more likely that Josephus is that it wasn't corrupted by later Christians.
Right. Well, what I don't understand is like, I mean, are there people who are not atheists, as so many of the ancient philosophers were not, but are kind of in this area like this, like, you know, kind of like in an argument with Christianity or something, but they're theists, but they just are, or is it mostly kind of atheists?
You mean like people you run into online?
Yeah, like, are there any kind of like, so this guy's an atheist guy that wants to kind of argue with, I guess, anyone.
I mean, the Protestants will often the kind of so there's always normal people that are relatively sane, and they're always really fun when you find them. The unhinged like stereotypes, the unhinged Protestant stereotype is they just want to talk about evolution the whole time and why evolution is false.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the biggest proof a lot of these, and we can go to those if you want, but there's the biggest proof the Protestant people offer for God is they offer evolution being false as their proof for God. It's like, that's such a high bar. You got to convince them evolution is false, and then go therefore God.
Oh man.
We don't need to do more of this one. I think the most interesting one is the next one. So this is when the conversation goes relatively civil.
Yeah.
So the next one that is going to be a lot shorter. I think we can call this one here. It's getting repetitive, right? I don't think I'm on it that much longer.
Right.
Like it's irrational. He wants us to believe.
What's the one you got
irrational.
kicked off?
What do you say?
What was the one you got kicked off?
Yeah, this next one, I do exactly the same style of argumentation. So if anything, this guy we just talked to, relatively polite, hears me out. He even researches it and checks me a little bit. It's actually a decent conversation. He has all this baggage that you would expect an online atheist to have, but It's actually a pretty good conversation. And it's interesting to listen to. This next one is not. This is actually, let me show you this. So there's this guy. His name is Matt DILLIHUNTY. Please ignore the ad. He's even like with Jordan Peterson. Like he's here with Jordan Peterson. Like, this is not like some random whatever guy, right?
He looks like an atheist.
He definitely looks like an atheist.
Interesting. He debates someone who's not sure he believes in God about God.
I think this one is more about I think it's more about whether or not God is good than about God itself.
Okay.
Yeah, I've not watched this debate in years. I don't actually remember. It was only a year ago? Huh. I don't know if I've watched this debate since it originally aired.
Okay.
Now here is me with the guy who debates Jordan Peterson.
Okay, interesting.
Let's see where it starts.
Catholic, theist pronunciation, minor things are sincere or clueful. Because you don't drop things like a priori knowledge or I'm not a scientist, but as if any of us needed to be told you weren't a scientist. You don't present your case and then the instant somebody offers the first minor suggested hint that your logic is unreasonable, you just, I just changed. I'm the kind of person that changes my mind. If you haven't spent 2 seconds, this is a cartoonish thing. You are not sincere. I don't believe it. I have more respect for theists than to think you were in any way representing them. All right, try this. Yeah. Somebody saying, the name here is Finally Catholic. A theist pronunciation says the Gospels were not originally anonymous. Okay. Hey, Finally Catholic. Who said they were?
I mean, you guys said that like 20 minutes ago, didn't you? 10 minutes ago?
No, I said that they are anonymous. They weren't. I'm not saying they were.
What do you say?
It's just fun. Sorry, just go on.
Note that Eric seems to have recognized me. So I was on another live stream the day or two before that Eric was on. So Eric recognizes the name here.
Got you.
Yeah, you can see his reaction slightly.
Right,
bro. Philosophy.
In doing that,
you decided to call in to if there's a God, your God let you spend 2 seconds. A scientist. You don't. just changed. I'm the kind of person. We're not originally anonymous. Whoever wrote them knew.
Sorry, what were you saying?
You put he, him for your name. Sorry.
No, they make you. These guys make you put their pronouns. I think they don't understand. They don't know what men and women are, so we need to help them know.
Oh man!
Remember, without God. Remember, you've heard the phrase from Vatican II: "Without God, man is unintelligible."
Right.
Also, without God, what is a woman?
Right. Oh man!
Hey, finally, Catholic. Who said they were?
I mean, you guys said that like 20 minutes ago, didn't you? 10 minutes ago?
No, I said that they are anonymous. They weren't. I'm not saying they were originally anonymous. Whoever wrote them knew who it was, and perhaps the first person that received them knew who the author was. But they're not signed, and we have no indication of who actually wrote them. They are currently anonymous.
Who signs books?
So you said they're not.
What do you say?
I just said who has ever signed a book? I mean, like historically, but anyways, go on.
It's also just the idea that like, oh no, they originally had a name, and then we lost the name, and then later they got renamed. It's like,
right.
That is absurd, and no one's ever actually suggested that.
Not signed. That's not accurate
Correct.
according to the early manuscripts, right? Every early manuscript has
I'm sorry, but the earliest manuscripts for the Gospels are unsigned. We have no originals.
That every single manuscript we have has the attribution at the top. We don't have one without it.
No. I'm sorry, finally, Catholic, but you've been misinformed.
Literally, we just saw in the last one that the other atheist Googled it and saw it was true. So he's saying I'm misinformed on this data point that we just saw another atheist admit.
This guy's the omni expert apparently on every multi-fest. Right.
Look at the bald head. Look at the beard.
I really wonder, has this guy, like, the level of confidence he has is as if he's, read all the, like the church fathers or something. Like, it's just, I wonder if he's even read any. Do you think he has? Does he know what does he have some knowledge of theology and history and development of theology? And
you should watch this, and I'm interested in your take on how much you think this guy knows.
Okay.
The copies of the gospel that we have names attributed for them from them as a matter of church tradition. There are no originals. There are no signed copies. And the first three gospels do not even claim who the author is. That is attributed afterwards by the church. But let's assume for a second. Why? I don't know why. I don't know why you're talking over me. And that's never.
He just monologues for so long, and if you try to get a word in, he's just like,
man. I mean, I don't know why there'd be an assumption that the church, which we're talking about, bishops scattered across the world, would and in a period where there were so many martyrs. I mean, this was a period of, we're talking about periods of intense persecution and resistance, that this would not be their area or domain of expertise, that they would know what they're talking about, that would be oral tradition, and how they could all have a unanimity regarding something just randomly and unanimously attributed without any good sense or any good reason, or without any kind of tradition, oral tradition, or anything of the sort. It would be a strange thing to me. So even if we were to claim that nothing, like that, it was just suddenly there was just all this ignorance, and and this stuff was kind of like added sometime later, that there'd be no kind of method to the madness.
They just know their talking points. Like, look at this comment. No manuscript before the Middle Ages had those names. That is blatantly false. Like, that is just, you can, yeah.
Never going to fucking work. Let's assume that all four gospels were actually, as I did in the last call or two calls ago, they were written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Let's just assume that you're correct. And we'll assume that we have originals. Neither of those are true, but we'll assume both of those. So what? What does that tell us?
So the claim I was going to say is, I think that you can actually say that they weren't anonymous. And that was the claim I said that was coming on here to talk about, if you're interested in hearing the case for it.
I don't give a shit about your case because it's irrelevant and it's not true. The fact of the matter is that the earliest and best manuscripts, this is not an atheist take on this. Stop fucking talking over me. It's never going to work.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
What is your obsession with not?
So this guy's out of control.
It gets worse.
Come on, I'm going to mute you, and you'll get to talk when I'm absolutely, completely done. Maybe.
Why is he so irritated? As if
New Testament scholars, Christian and non-Christian, are in agreement. There are entire books written about the authorship of various manuscripts. We don't have originals.
Look at that appeal to authority. You know, he just makes these jumps.
I mean, what does he mean by originals? We have almost what originals?
He means, do you have the one that Matthew wrote?
I know, but like, who has anything like that Cardeni text? I mean, what? Like,
yeah.
The oldest ones we have are not signed. It is church tradition that put Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John on there. It doesn't matter whether or not we have originals because they're not signed. We don't know whether or not the originals might have been signed. But even if we knew exactly who wrote them, and even if we could go back, even if we could interview them about what they wrote and why, none of that would in any way establish the truth of their claims. But if in fact their claims are true, we now have a situation where there is a God who came down and took human form and inspired people to write books, write letters about this event because it was important to everybody. And that God failed to preserve with any integrity the chain of custody for those writings.
it's actually just what the
chain of custody for those writings has not been preserved.
that's
If this were
He's just making all these claims.
what's funny about that is
What did you say?
it's like making an argument for the Catholic Church, actually, because the whole argument of the Catholic Church is that it is the divinely instituted custodian of the tradition. And it's funny how he's saying that's tradition. Like that's Catholic tradition. You don't think that they were first of all, if there is a universal, indivisible tradition, isn't that an argument in favor of their authorship? Not like, why would you just be like, oh, that's just tradition, and just like wave it away as if that's not actually an argument in favor, not against? Are you like telling me that like a solid tradition has no evidential weight or significance? So that's just weird. And whose tradition? Like, well, you know, like the argument he's making is an argument like, and he talks about this chain of transmission or custodial. I mean, that's an argument literally for the historical church. Like, so why, if you believe, yes, that God came and instituted a church, then you would believe that he would institute it to have the integrity to be the custodian and know what it's talking about when it says who wrote them and so on. So it would follow, like, anyways, I it just his argument. Anyways, go on. Yeah, it doesn't.
It's a very argument. Like, you will not hear other atheists making the argument as he just formulated it.
Right.
case in a court of law, it would be thrown out as fruit of a poisonous tree.
What?
When you call in to suggest they weren't originally anonymous, that's like saying my car, the car we found down the street, where the
No, he muted me and he's just berating me. He's just hitting me. Like, he's muted me and he's saying this rant, right?
I don't get it because you didn't come on as a troll. You're just like, and then he just got like super angry. I don't know. Is he always angry or what triggered him?
I won't not to spoil it. This guy on the right, this I'll just watch it. You'll hear. I get an explanation for that later, and it's not exactly satisfying.
Okay.
Scratched off. It used to have a VIN number. We fucking know it used to have a VIN number. We know somebody wrote it. We know somebody knew who wrote it. But nobody today has any justification for claiming they know who wrote any of them. There are people who think they can suspect and make a case for it. But I'm not interested in their speculation. I want somebody to explain to me.
All he's done is speculate. He's literally said nothing about the actual historical
And
records.
this isn't even the historical Christian and for Catholic argument. We're saying, like, look, what is the content of those teachings? The content of those teachings is reflected not just in the scriptures, but in so many books and so many letters and so many kind of documents, liturgical, if you will, artistic, archaeological, and across so many different languages and peoples and so on, and the teachings are, and the teachings are, yes, of a divine revelation, of very particular, with very specific content, Trinity, incarnation, so on, sacraments. And then we have many important things in regard to that, many stories of lives touched, transformed by grace, sacramental, and so on. And so there's like the approach to kind of ground, if you will, or to kind of motivate the Christian, specifically Christian claims are kind of somewhat more multivalent than he seems to be aware of or asserting here. And so my question would be, why is there such a firmly established belief in the divine breaking into the world in a continuous manner till this day, through the church, through the sacraments, so on and so forth, and just a kind of tidal wave of witnesses that would overwhelm any court? If you want to talk about a court, they wouldn't even be able to keep up with it.
I think it's interesting at the. I'm interested to get your take at the end of this about the character of Matt DILLIHUNTY here. How is he actually? Just
is that the guy on the right or the left?
The left. So the guy that was with Jordan Peterson, his name's Matt DILLIHUNTY.
Okay.
He's one of the biggest internet atheists, and I think if he's a model for internet atheism, he's just a bad guy, man. Like,
that other guy, the English guy, is more sharp.
Alex O'Connor.
Yeah.
No, he's great. Alex O'Connor's great.
Right.
How there's an all-knowing, all-powerful God that inspires the books and fails to preserve the chain of command and fails to interject and intervene to say, no, these are in fact reliable or unreliable.
It's literally the church and the council.
Even if they were...
He was a Protestant. He was a former Protestant for sure. He was a former Protestant for sure.
Or former Muslim. It's almost the Islamic arguments for the Quran.
Right. Because literally, does anything about early church history and all the ecumenical councils from the earliest times and so many of the...
I think he was almost a Baptist pastor or something.
Yeah, he's thinking like totally like why I wish these people would just study more. Like even people like Nietzsche, man. Like he did not know that much about Christianity, even just Protestant Christianity itself. Like he didn't know about like classical scholastic Protestantism. And he didn't seem to know that much about just even the Protestant Christian tradition, let alone Catholic and Eastern. He had a tremendous ignorance about Christianity in many respects. It's quite remarkable, the degree of his ignorance about Christianity. I wish some of these people just study a bit more. Now, what's frightening is when they do study more and they're still unconvinced. That's a whole nother story. But I wish those people would study more.
Just watch.
Copies signed and attested to by 5,000 other eyewitnesses that still would not show that what they say is true. And it's an embarrassing fact that is damning for Christianity. Can you resolve that issue?
Can I ask you a question first?
Okay. Can you resolve that issue?
I can try. I think the question I would ask is, when you say that the church put the current titles on there and that no matter where the manuscript is from, it was not the original, why do we think that?
Because there's a record of church fathers putting those on by name and noting that it was tradition, and there are no original.
I mean, I think you just didn't even understand the question there, right? Like that's
Copies.
Right. So he has a radical. He has a kind of hyperbolic doubt about the assertion of names. It's just strange to me, the level or degree of doubt. So, I mean, like even like if we're talking about, I mean, there's just no point to the doubt. I don't see it like there's no reason for us to doubt, for example, like some of the reasons that Muslims give for what they considered sound hadith, which is like a stronger chain of transmission that is like shorter and not longer, and there's more kind of witnesses to that chain of transmission. Like they have a certain logic to what they would consider like a sound hadith. I haven't looked into it too much. Perhaps you have, and I haven't had it explained to me for a long time. But we shouldn't necessarily. I don't see why we would doubt that. It's just curious to me. Yeah, there's a kind of a presupposition of doubting that just gets projected into everything to just kind of dismiss it and push it away without having evidence of the veracity of the conclusions of that doubt.
Yeah, he's just committing a category or two. If I ask, which here, just listen to the question I ask and how he answered it. It's just he doesn't even coherently answer the question.
I can try. I think the question I would ask is, when you say that the church put the current titles on there and that no matter where the manuscript is from, it was not the original, why do we think that?
Right. I'm saying, why did we attribute it to the church fathers? We did. He's saying It's a random attribute, not a random, but just a traditional attribution. It's like, okay, well, how did that attribution start?
Because there's a record of church fathers putting those on by name and noting that it was tradition, and there are.
He's like skipping ahead. Like it's just not even a real answer.
Are no original copies?
Why, no matter what country it was in, from Spain to India, are the names the same on the early manuscripts? I guess
because the earliest manuscripts included that attestation. The church tradition started.
The earliest manuscripts included the attribute. He just said it. He just said, yeah, there's the whole case. They're not anonymous.
This guy's a very high bar for what he's going to be willing to grant. This is, I wonder if he consistently applies this high bar in other aspects, in every aspect of his life. I would imagine not. But I think he's bought into this kind of thing, which a lot of people have bought into. Is a kind of a very modernistic narrative that, well, modern thinkers are more reliable than pre-modern thinkers, so we can just kind of cast more skeptical doubt and suspicion on pre-modern thinkers and think of them as some inferior thinkers, which makes me think they haven't read a lot of these modern thinkers. Because I mean, I'm telling you, I was just thinking about it. Like, for example, Freud and his disciples. So these were extremely brilliant, prolific people, but their conception of kind of like human existence and human possibility really falls short of even, the Epicureans. And Epicureans were not the most venerated of ancient, philosophers. They usually were not held in the highest esteem. Like, for example, like in terms of, and so if we take like perhaps arguably the least venerated ancient philosopher amongst the main ones, Epicurus, which a lot of people have liked to critique or cast score on or take issue with, Stoics and Platonists and others and so on. He ends up looking like a very kind of impressive sage compared to a lot of modern thinkers and philosophers and their conception of the possibilities and kind of a dignity of human existence. So I'm saying like there's so many respects, if you even so I'm just taking and he's the most modest of ancient philosophers, and then he ends up looking ambitious in terms of of the image of the kind of moral or ethical spiritual possibilities of human existence compared to modern so many modern thinkers, like let's just say, take for example the Freudians, which take a very somewhat grim and pessimistic view of what would constitute, the possibilities of psychological health and wellness are flourishing. So I'm saying is like what you see the argument I'm saying is that if you actually study the ancients, I mean, these were so utterly brilliant in so many ways. It doesn't mean they got everything right, and it doesn't mean moderns get everything right. And there's a lot of things moderns have forgot that the ancients were quite clear and consistent on. And neither are perfect, but I wish there was more of a standpoint of humility where the moderns can kind of get off their high horse and kind of more humbly study their predecessors and correct what needs to be corrected, but also kind of, I think, realize that a high bar was left for them that they're actually in many respects failing to discern and rise up to as well. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's gonna get worse. I think it's just watch. It's
with that attestation, that doesn't does the fact that the early church says a particular gospel was written by Matthew, does that mean it was?
It's more like even if the oldest physical documents are found.
Here's the thing. This is the problem with you dishonest.
I mean, it seemed like a rhetorical question too, right? Like,
it's more like even if the oldest physical documents are found.
Here's the thing. This is the problem with you dishonest fucking apologists. I asked the question and I phrased it very fucking clearly, and that if you answer it honestly,
they told me to follow my dreams, but they didn't tell me that it would be 600.
The conversation, and that if you answer it honestly, the conversation. Shut up.
Wow.
That if you answer it honestly, the conversation is not going to go the way you want. So instead of answering it honestly, you begin to answer it dishonestly. Well, I have 0 fucks left to give for dishonest motherfuckers.
Dang.
The truth is,
that was after I said not necessarily to. When he said, after I even granted his point, that was his reaction.
You didn't answer that question honestly, and I suspect it's because I
think you're giving whole syllogisms rather than asking one question at a time, right? Like,
I think you're a fucking liar because I asked you a simple question about whether or not you could solve that problem that I raised. And instead, you decided that you wanted to ask a question. And I entertained your question, and I asked you a question.
And I answered his question after that, to be clear.
Does the fact that the earliest records attribute a gospel to Matthew mean that it was in fact written by Matthew? Yes or no?
Not necessarily. You're right.
No. See, this is the problem. I just called you out for your fucking dishonesty. And then when I forced you like a child because you're undeserving of adult conversation to answer yes or no, you couldn't fucking do that. You had to stick in your little thing. We already knew you were going to do it. Nobody needed you to add that.
What little thing did I stick in? I said not necessarily. You're right. Like, what's better than that?
Surprised the level of contempt this guy has. I think it's my assumption is he was raised Protestant. He lost his faith. That's a disillusioning desolation. And the only thing that could fuel you from that kind of fall and subsequent sort of darkness and sense of almost betrayal is this kind of passionate anger, which could turn into pride and contempt. But like filtering into that is an underlying kind of anti-Catholicism too that came from his Protestantism, probably,
I think I've also, or he also just talks to unhinged Protestants all day, every day. Like if you get random illiterate Protestants, there are a lot of literate Protestants, but the kind of people that call into his show are pretty illiterate most of the time. If you're doing that 3 hours a day, every day for 10 years, it's going to warp your brain,
Right. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah.
We already know that your opinion is no, not necessarily, but you couldn't help not adding it. So I give up.
Fact by itself, yeah. But
no.
Eric's take on this. I think you're speaking very rudely.
So, okay, here's the thing. I was just getting ready to say, I'm going to take a back seat again and let Eric do this because he's good at it. But you're an annoying prick who thinks you can run my fucking show after lying to me. So I'm not going to turn this one over to Eric. Goodbye. Pro tip.
So I got kicked off.
Man, I don't quite get what triggered him. I don't get it because he just kind of something triggered him and he lost it. I don't. It doesn't fully make sense because you didn't. You were pretty calm. It's what do you think is the explanation?
Well, what we're gonna get to next, the guy on the right. I actually have like a 45-minute conversation with the guy on the right on another channel, and we talk about it.
About this, what just happened?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, I mean, let's finish this one out just so you get the whole context. But there's this after this video every day. There's another video called Breakfast Taco where this the guy that looks like where is he? You know this channel, this guy.
I don't know any of these channels, man.
This is the other one I've sent you where, and he's live streaming right now too. This guy, they do it every day after for like 3 or 4 hours after the other show, and a bunch of these guys watch the first show.
So I have actual atheists in my life, which I've argued with, so I haven't really gone on the shows. I've had enough of them in my actual life, you know. But I've done it enough, and enough times and long enough that all my illusions of I'm going to use this argument and that argument and this line of reasoning, I've thrown the whole library at them, and nothing seems to budge. So I just kind of gave up.
Yeah, really, people convert for morality more than they convert for the arguments for God, I think. Like, if you convince someone that the way secular people live is wrong and hurting them, that is the number one thing that if you can succeed at, they'll become a theist.
I don't understand why it's not self-convincing. For me, it was a self-convincing sort of a thing. Well, no, I mean, I suppose you have to have some conception of an alternative for it to become self-convincing. But anyways, go on now.
Yeah. All right. Let's finish this one and then we'll hop over because I think this is where it gets really interesting is when we hop over to the other one. But
if you can't be honest in answering the questions,
he talks about honesty a lot. I was not lying or dishonest at any point there. You know, like
yeah.
If you watch these two interviews back to back, I did basically the same exact take with both of these atheists.
I would really question this man. Is he really so honest in every aspect of his life? And if he is, and even if he is, which I doubt, that he's completely honest to himself and to others in every aspect of his life, because there's a lot of gray areas, and what do we precisely mean by honesty? There could be some different conception of it. There's mental reservation count. There's kind of blurry responses. What about what about kind of occasional exaggeration? Do you have to be clear, precise, and accurate and transparent everywhere all the time? Or is this honesty an ethical honesty? Because honesty can very much turn into something monstrous, deforming, and destructive. Anyways, yeah.
Yeah, we just saw I had the exact same talking points to two different atheists. One is, slightly, and I mean, he definitely is a fun YouTuber, but we have a full conversation about it. And this guy is
a happy atheist. I like the happy atheists better, like the ones that are a little bit more but by happy I mean slightly more, take themselves a little less seriously, a little bit more cheerful, a little bit more lighthearted.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
don't see if you can pass it over to the co-host. I'll do that. Why do Catholics lie? Why do Catholic apologists lie? Why can't they just acknowledge the truth? The truth is that the Gospels were attributed with names that may or may not be accurate. We don't know. The truth is that.
But no, I got him there. He didn't say they're anonymous. He now is saying he's not sure. I made him an agnostic on the issue, despite how angry he got.
Interesting.
I think that's why he's angry.
They may or may not have been inspired by God. We don't.
Oh, did you see this comment? Argumentum ad Euromini.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No. The truth is, they may or may not be accurate. We don't know. But apologists can't acknowledge that we don't know.
Well, wait a second. This guy, you're telling me, I would seriously doubt if this guy's like, Christianity may be true, it may not be true. We don't know.
If there's
First of all, how does he know that we don't know? It's a really serious question. He's presupposing here that it's unknowable whether it's true or not, and that the definitive human situation here is that it's just may be true, it may not be true. There's no way of knowing. That is not, I would argue that is not the case, and of course many would argue that's not the case, that this kind of agnosticism that he's proposing is not reflective of the reality. But further, if it was, you would think you'd want to then again take Pascal's wager and throw your lot in just in case it may be, if true with Christianity, and but anyways, yeah.
See my comment pop in here?
That was you. I think people saw that he's just ranting and doesn't let you get a word in.
Oh man, yeah.
doubt, the entire foundation of their belief goes away.
Yeah.
If Christ be not risen, our faith is in vain. And if the Bible be not reliable, the confidence that Christ is risen is not reliable. If the Bible be not confirmable, the reliability of the Bible is not confirmable.
Okay. Of course.
This is the damning problem here. And it would have been so much better if you'd have just acknowledged it and said, I'm convinced that it was written by so-and-so because of this, because, but you have no other writings of Matthew to compare it to. You have no other writings.
I don't think this is fair. I didn't really he gives full syllogisms and you have to accept his syllogism, then answer the question at the end. It's like, can we just have a conversation about it?
He also, again, like a Protestant, thinks that the only source is sacred scripture, where there's sacred scripture and sacred tradition. And you have these streams of kind of mutually reflecting and supporting dissemination of information and witnesses and so on and so forth. And I don't get what he's saying. It's almost like he's like, I don't know quite what the point he's making. I mean, you could say he seems to act like the evidence is, he seems to be pretending that or maybe he's convinced that the evidence is totally equal. It's just like this equal weight, it could be true, it could not be true. The debate is really about what direction you might become more. I don't I'm not going to. It's a weird thing he's kind of saying here, Finally Catholic, because I don't know if he fully knows what he's saying. Because on the one sense, either he's making a claim that you just can't know about the reliability of the Bible or not, et cetera, et cetera. And it could be, could not be. It's anyone's best guess, and everyone's kind of, and whether you're convinced or you're not convinced.
Yeah, he also gave one of the strongest arguments, or the strongest versions of custodians holding on to a truth that I've ever heard. I've never heard of someone saying that this false belief could be made up and then maintain that widespread. And we see it with like Hebrews gets attributed to 14 different people or whatever,
But I mean, but it's the argument that would suggest faith in Christianity. First of all, we've never claimed that you have that everything has to be kind of known with the highest level of scientific certainty. We understand faith is involved, and faith and trust are involved in so many aspects of human life and endeavor, generally speaking. So that's not something kind of unique to Christianity, although I don't want to say they're the same type of faith. All faith is just of one kind of type or category. But we've always kind of said that, there's a very important element of grace that's also involved. So we're not just saying like it's all just something about like everything is just like pure rational demonstration or pure kind of scientific certainty, but no, there's faith and grace involved as well. And there's many sort of occasions and sort of sources of motivation that kind of elicit or, you know, if you will, or that faith, not just scripture or kind of, if you will, something like quote unquote more abstract propositions or what have you.
You should call into one of those. I'd be interested to see you talk to them.
I don't know how it would go. Yeah, I don't know how it would go.
Yeah. All right, let's close this one out because I think the next one's more interesting. And
sure.
I know you just said you didn't have a ton of time. So
sure.
Things of Mark to compare to. You have no other writings of Luke to compare to. So even when it comes down to analyzing the writing patterns, you can assess which things were probably written by one author or two authors. That's how we know that out of all the...
Also, last thing, note how he says he doesn't care, but then he goes on to, even when I'm off the call, he keeps talking about it.
Right.
The writings in the Bible attributed to Paul, we have ones are really by Paul or the same author, and which ones are not, including one that specifically claims, I'll paraphrase, this isn't a forgery, this was really written by Paul, when it probably wasn't. So it's funny that yet another Catholic got their knickers in a twist over a claim that contradicts what they were taught in church, and yet will not defend the position that they're advocating for.
I think if you watch that and your takeaway is that I was the one that got their knickers in a twist, you may not know how to read humor.
Is this guy Eric? Because he seems very kind of, because I'm more of the hot-headed type. I'm not quite this kind of unhinged, hot-headed. Hopefully, does this guy Matt like this a lot, or is this rare?
I think he's like this a lot. And Eric, if Eric in the next interview is going to literally be 100% on my side and like, yeah, the way he talked wasn't good, and like it was.
Okay, this Eric guy he seems way more cool-headed. More.
Yeah, it'll be fun to listen to him.
Yeah.
It's very tiring.
One of the big things about the Gospels that I find really fascinating, and I think probably watching the likes of Apologia and his interviews with Bart Ehrman and other various scholars, is that there is a lot of mystery around the Gospels because we don't have original manuscripts. We have a lot of church tradition trying to tell us what to think about it, but as we established earlier, the church tradition isn't reliable, especially when it comes to things like, you know, if it was just normal books that didn't have any supernatural claims inside of it, okay, fine. Church tradition can tell us that we have this author here. We can maybe increase confidence in it a little bit if the supernatural claims weren't there. But the fact that the books contain supernatural claims, that's going to be lowering our confidence in just about anything anybody has to say about it, unless we're getting information directly from the source. If we had an original manuscript, like the original, and it says...
thought. That's a very weird thought.
Are you ready for retirement?
I'm trying to...
Our free retirement planner shows you where...
written by Mark, and then it goes into the text.
Socrates or any Papias, and it's
really
think that the
gospel.
gospel...
Talk about this for so long. Yeah, I'm not that interested. All right, let's go to note that he said, you know, you don't get to run my channel. You don't get to talk to this guy. Now watch what happens.
However you want to cash that out. The only thing that stops you from being a realist at that point is if there's like, as if it's true that we should prefer to succeed or whatever.
Where does it happen?
So I wouldn't want to die. I wouldn't want some that's ingrained.
Naturalist have it as a
where they just want to modify the question. They want to modify.
I think empathy is like a crucial aspect of like that. It's not beneficial to yourself. Obviously, if I'm dying, it's not.
I can't find it because it's going to be earlier on. He goes, yeah, you guys want to finish the conversation?
I know. You're just saying that there's some morality that exists. But
I think we're going to find it here.
Looking for it. Can I say one thing about what Eric said on the previous thing?
Yep.
He did not give a good, and he did not give good reasoning or argument for why church tradition is unreliable.
Oh yeah, no, it didn't make sense at all. And we're going to get into it here.
Right.
Yeah, this channel is a lot funnier to me because you'll see they're going to talk about like how boring people are is more important than like they won't call people liars, they'll call them boring.
Right.
Yes to that, and a lot of people actually not only verbally respond to that, but actually will, in cases, sacrifice themselves to save a
Sorry,
yeah.
so
Official
they
too.
join.
What are they? They'll say, "Well, I would really know who you were going to. If you are going to be the one pulling the lever, one of the 5 people on that track, or one of the persons on that other track." If you didn't
yes,
know
the
who
veil of
you were-
ignorance.
Yeah. If you didn't know who you were going to be, what would you say? Well, it's the bullet.
Approach that you should not imbibe one
Leading track, but in reality,
as if
things there, you want people to assume that there's a way to try to save everyone most of the time. Or their first terms. It doesn't
Try that on me too, where they just want to modify the question.
It's not before their first reaction is, oh, is there some way out of it? Right? Like the human reaction.
We're talking about
is
the trolley
find a
problem here. It does annoy me, but I handle it differently.
Oh,
land, you know.
right. But when you pose it to almost any way, sorry, it's about to
scenario.
start here. Yeah, people want to be Captain Kirk, and
for them, but also for a G.
There's some people you can convince what their answer would change, that it's them removed realistically.
There's a person in the chat saying you're saying altruism when you're. No, if there's. I'm not denying.
Yeah, I've soaked up a lot of time though with my questions and thoughts, and there's some
Here we
other
go.
people, so I wanted to hear from everyone else.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the stage, Eric and Catholic. As I said the other day, y'all were on the line, and Catholic, he kind of got pushed off, and I get it, right? Matt is like past the Bible, right? But it sounded like y'all two actually wanted to talk, and I don't mind hosting. That's what I do. I host conversations, right?
Yeah. No, that's totally fine. I got nothing.
Oh, this is
against
much
Catholic or
more
anything like that.
level-headed sounding. Wow.
I mean, it's honestly impressive, right? Like it's the guy with this image is level-headed. Like it's
Yeah.
No, but I love Breakfast Taco. This is one of my favorite YouTube channels now, actually, because the way he hosts these things.
Yeah, the show's the show. It's going to be like that. So, and I'm not going to defend or condemn Matt. Let's just continue the conversation and keep going.
Yeah, and I realize now watching it, like it's not about responding to the propositions before the question. You got to just start with the question. You can't. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say this. I've been watching Matt for a long time, and he obviously doesn't handle every conversation perfectly, but I think he handles a majority of them very well. The things that really will get his goat is if you are very wordy, dishonest, evasive, or jump to things like defending slavery or genocide and stuff, which the latter he didn't do there. But if yes or no questions aren't answered directly and there's like a song and dance, because we see that quite a lot on the show, that can really get him annoyed. It does annoy me, but I handle it differently. But yeah, that's usually it. We had a joke on Sunday when we hosted that show. We had a caller that would just refuse to answer simple yes or no questions, and we were joking that, hey, we should probably have like some, like, for certain callers, we should have like primer questions at the very beginning of the call to calibrate them to getting used to answering yes or no questions. You know, things like, did you have breakfast? Are you married? Have you ever mugged somebody? Like things like that. So it's kind of a funny joke on the show. But anyway, I'm not saying you did that, you didn't do that, but you may have done like a mix of that where it just, Matt's been doing it for 20 years and he gets he's very short with that kind of stuff, because understandably so, he's been dealing with it for so long. So anyway, I'm not like that. I won't do that to you here. So I'm happy to have just a chill conversation.
Yeah, I hear it. I definitely could see why what I did read like that. What I was trying to do was, he says 3 paragraphs and then the yes or no question. So responding to sentence 1 of the 3 paragraphs, which I was trying to not evade. I was trying to start with.
Yeah, it's fine. Like I said, I'm not here to defend or condemn him or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, he kind of just condemned him a little bit, though. He's like, yeah, he's good most of the time, but he kind of did just implicitly condemn him, didn't he?
Did you just ask me a question?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm asking you a question, X. Yeah, he kind of implicitly condemned him right there, right?
I mean, I think one can just. Yeah, I mean, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, he definitely crosses lines sometimes. He's been doing it a long time, and there's a lot of bad callers.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, no, I mean that was clear from the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah.
What it is.
It is kind of interesting though that I managed to get a conversation with the other guy, right? Like a day later. Like
Right. I didn't know how. I mean, I thought you had those prominent atheists back after 9/11, and there was a kind of a wave that was people rode for a while, and then I thought it kind of somewhat died out a little bit. Because there's some people who are just atheists. They're just like, I'm atheist. They don't make too big of a deal about it. There's some people that kind of make it the center of their identity and make a big deal about it. So-called militant atheists, or well, I guess I don't know what you call these guys who are. They're not exactly militant. They're like they put it at the center of their identity, but they're kind of chill about it. I don't know. I don't know what you would call that.
I mean, especially the guy on the left and the guy on the other stream, they kind of feel like legacy characters of an old school atheism. I think Eric's a little better. And then there's this guy, William Horn, who is like, let's see if I can find it here. There's this guy, William Horn, who this was his messages to me about it. It was just like,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he just like fully agreed. Like it was
interesting.
I've talked to him before a few times. This guy is like, he could be the next Alex O'Connor if he does a lot of this. He's really good.
Right.
And like,
so is this community all pretty interconnected? Like, does Alex O'Connor come on this?
No, I don't think Alex O'Connor is connected to this. I think there's the Matt DILLIHUNTY thing, which somehow the Eric guy is part of. And then I think there's like this other community of like low tier atheists and religion YouTubers that all talk to each other. That is like only connected through this Eric guy. Everyone else just kind of like watches the show. And then...
This is kind of like the American Atheist Club or something. Online Atheist Club, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
And you're telling me they don't kind of interact with kind of the more scholastic-y sort of figures, like the more kind of philosophical theologian.
There's not that many of those online. The kind of people you get here are more like, so we're at 132.37. Listen to this guy. This is the kind of person they normally get.
First, we offer overnight
ads. Yeah, this is just to show you the kind of person they normally get.
But hundreds of thousands of years of evolution to get to that point, at least separated.
Now, what is the difference between these finches and any other finch in the world?
Very different beaks, very different bodies.
Oh no.
There's too much to say there.
Yeah, we know they did. Evolution is true. Nobody
that
cares.
is an exaggeration, and it's not true, because what we actually see happening in nature is a single cell organism continually produces another sister cell through mitosis. You have a single cell splits into two sister cells that are identical, and they split into 4. They split into 8. And then they begin to, in some cases.
Yeah, they're not talking to scholastics. No.
Sorry. Oh man. Interesting. So there isn't too much overlap between, I guess, these atheists and these kind of more philosophical theologian types.
I think most scholastic type people like us can't really stomach this kind of trash. I think it's so enjoyable to be in the trenches. I feel like it's the town square and it's a medieval town, where you just like get.
Oh man.
Yeah, back to it. But yeah, people like that are why, it's not like they get 10 Thomists and then me. They're getting 10, the Flaming Dragon who says...
In some cases...
Down man yesterday, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh,
or the
some
day
guy paid $5 to get him muted even.
Oh, man. Is that right?
Yeah, you can pay money to mute people.
That's pretty crazy. That's pretty ridiculous. Oh,
yeah. Back to it.
And It's there to generate views and content, so it's a little sensationalist. You get really good stuff out of it, like really good quality, like meaty conversations out of it. But then there's also like clickbait stuff. So yeah, just take it what it is. It's just it is
No,
what it is.
I know it's in the medium. It's a,
yeah.
If I'm person number 100 of
Syllogisms.
the day, it's very different than Right.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Syllogisms can be long anyway.
They can,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
Syllogisms can be long, and
so it's not
even
necessarily that he was in bad faith, even though he had as long syllogism.
yeah, syllogisms are long, and then even syllogisms like premises are the conclusions of other syllogisms, and it's like this big syllogism tree, and it's hard to cram that into a 25-minute chat, in front of an audience.
And it definitely won't help if the person asked whether they agree with the premise is gonna fucking dodge.
Yeah.
So they never do anything like
yeah. So I think the topic was whether gospels were signed or not.
It was whether they're anonymous.
Yeah. So I mean, again, same thing. Like I just basically said it from the other end. I'm no biblical scholar. I dabble in this, but it's my understanding that we don't have the original manuscripts. We have like credit card sized scraps from the 2nd century, 3rd century, and then as the centuries progress, we get more and more because
he's slightly underestimating it because it's like full pages, but he is right generally that you don't get the full books until the 200s.
Less time has literally eaten away at those manuscripts. We don't have any that are signed, any originals that are signed that show the actual author of it. That's not saying that they definitely didn't have those names attached to them, but we have no way of knowing. They may have not been anonymous back then, but they are anonymous now because we don't have those copies anymore. All we have to go off of are...
Note that a lot of like Jesuit and liberal Catholics actually will say they were originally anonymous and just from the community and whatever. This guy's actually taking a more sober stance than most like Jesuit liberal Catholic scholars on this.
Gotcha. Right.
The names that were assigned to these books by church leaders and as solidified by church tradition over the centuries. And personally, I kind of take those facts and I go, okay, it's possible these were actually written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But we have certain things like the synoptic problem. We have certain things, patterns we see in there like copying fatigue. We have different theories about why these books are like this. And also the fact that, these books were written over 1,000 kilometers or 1,000 miles away from the point of the original events, decades later, in a completely different language. These guys copied from each other. A lot of like indications that these aren't quite how they're presented to accounts. So when it comes down to like probabilities, possibilities, I look at it and go, yeah, probably more likely than not, these were not written by the namesakes on these books. And that's kind of like my position right there. And that's coming from just like I said, just doing like just layman's research and kind of reading about it here and there. I'd be happy to hear other opinions about it though.
Yeah, I think in broad strokes, like, it's not, I would not contest the main meat of it. I would agree that the manuscripts that we have, most of them are not super old. I think you can probably go back 50 to 100 years earlier than your pitch. Like we have a few, not full Bibles, but full, like, I think there's a full Mark or a full Matthew or something from the 200s.
Let me let's take a look at that. Actually, I'll look that up. But keep on going. I'll just research that while you're talking.
And then I think the biggest data point that I find interesting is every manuscript we have. Whether it's Spain or Syria or India or wherever, they all are unanimous in which authors they put at the top of the page. So the gospel according to whatever. And actually, a lot don't even say the gospel. A lot of the earliest ones just say according to Mark. They don't even say the gospel according to Mark. And you'll see how much energy do you have? I know we're almost at 2 hours here.
Are we really? Wow,
Yeah.
I lost track of time. Boy, we should definitely wrap it up. I cannot believe. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So this just ends up being a pretty civil debate back and forth.
Yeah.
I think if the focus of this is whether atheists are
my
civil,
energy, you called it. Like my energy was pretty zapped by that. That's why I wasn't like intervening and commenting as much. My energy's gone. Yeah.
This one's just a pretty civil actual debate, and he goes back and forth, brings up some good
Yeah, I
points.
mean, the other thing's more easier to because the other video was easier to comment on, you know.
Yeah, this one's easier to, you know.
This one's too calm. It's kind of putting me to sleep a little bit, you know.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting conversation. I'm sure there's good clips to get from it, but it's it's you know, it just becomes an actual discourse about it.
Sure, right. Yeah, but what I wonder is like, do some of the guys, do they ever get into some really interesting, not like low hanging fruit, but some really interesting intellectual investigations, discussions, like for example, like reading Anselm's Monologion, Prosologion, and thinking and examining and thinking about it, seeing like, you know, do they kind of get into interesting historical, theological, interesting historical texts in what you might call philosophical theology?
I mean, they don't tend to go there, but as far as like the Kalam argument and, you know, there has to be an uncaused cause and the hard problem of consciousness, they've gotten into those stuff and they've gone deep in especially hard problem of consciousness. It depends on the guy, but let's see if I can find him. But they're also going right now, which is funny.
For us,
I wonder if we
every
pop in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, man. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, one of these guys. No, not one of these guys. So there's
best to call it a night for all my stuff.
So I guess what's your takeaway if you have to wrap up? How do we think about, you know, how do we think about the way atheists work on YouTube? There's just such a widespread. Like, what's your takeaway?
Right. Well, I haven't. The only thing I was influenced by was the only thing I had seen these days was O'Connor, and he kind of has a very kind of from what I recall about him, he has a very kind of peculiar approach. It's kind of like of a frustrated seeker. He's like, I tried really hard. I just wanted to sort of feel or experience the presence of God. I didn't. I feel like I gave it a good try. Nothing happened. So I'm kind of, you know, over it. And so kind of try to like convince me intellectually, I suppose. And he kind of has a pretty icy cold critical approach. Yeah, and I'm not quite, I don't know quite what I would say if I encountered him, but it'd be an interesting conversation to imagine. I guess what I would say is like, listen, don't think that. So it's interesting that for him, it's not all intellectual. It's not just a number of like, and by the way, when I say that, it's not quite clear what rational or intellectual means. I mean, it's not quite clear what the Greeks and the Latins use different terminology. They talk about certain terms like noetic or nous. They had different kind of conceptions of the mind that I think expressed a potentiality for what the mind is capable of, let's say through intellectual intuition of kind of like a certain spiritual perception that a lot of modern models of the mind don't imply. But instead of just kind of taking let's call it a verbal discursive approach or dialectical approach. Maybe that's the better term instead of intellectual, but he was kind of
just really polished and sober in ways that these guys are often neither of those things. I mean, the last guys are. The last conversation is actually a really good one. Like, we could have a whole video. We just go through the arguments of the last one.
Yeah. But what's interesting about O'Connor is he's not just interested in arguments per se of a verbal and conceptual or discursive sort, but he was kind of like looking for religious experience. He was kind of like trying to he wanted to have a contact between God and his soul that he feels that he put a sincere effort toward, and that if it would have happened, he claims he would have been convinced and he would have converted. Now, whether or not that's true, I don't know, because people can actually have these encounters and then they can choose later to doubt them, especially if they're surrounded by scoffers and doubters, they could very easily kind of become affected or obscured by that. So just because he would have had a legitimate religious or spiritual experience does not necessarily mean he wouldn't have, been dismissive of it later on, and it would have kind of faded from his memory and become something that would become obscure, and that he would have taken maybe a skeptical attitude towards. But let's just say it's true that if he would have had that contact between his soul and God in his search, he would have actually become Christian, let's say. Because presumably this would have been in a Christian context. And again, you do need more than just religious experience. I mean, sometimes the religious experience can be so specifically Christian in content that there's just no denying it or no way around it. But people have religious spiritual experiences in different contexts. It just that can mean or imply or include different things, and it's not necessarily like a kind of a sort of definitive proof in and of itself that doesn't require anything else to support it. But I would just tell him, I say, listen, like, I would kind of tell him what I just said basically, and I would say, like, look, there's as Newman says, there's a kind of multifaceted accumulation of proofs and evidences that kind of just add up to a kind of a super argument, if you will, that would strongly incline you towards the faith. And what a very important thing in there is what you might call some sort of a religious or spiritual experience. It's not necessarily the be all end all, but I would argue it is an important dimension of that. But just because you're still a young man, you're not like a gray hair old wizened sage. I think he's still in his 20s. I don't know how old he is. He's not that old. I mean, you put some years into it, but why'd you give up so easy? Especially for something so great, like
26. Yeah.
It's like you're acting like you're like Solomon in Ecclesiastes or something, and you've seen and witnessed and experienced everything there is to see and witness and experience, that you're just on the top of the mountain of like human experience with regard to these things. Hey boy, like like a lot of people in your age are over
3 kids.
Wow,
I don't believe that. Does he really? Oh no, this is somebody else.
Okay, I was gonna say, yeah, I was gonna say good for him, but that would have been impressive. But this Alex O'Connor is 26, right?
Yeah, no, he is 26.
Okay, so I would say, listen, like, I think it's a common knowledge that people around his age sometimes think they're wiser than they actually are.
Wait, did you see this?
No.
I'm going down and I'm like,
yeah,
all of this. Who is Cosmic Skeptic? What college did he go to? And then I look at who's Supreme of the Universe. What?
Oh man. Oh man. You see what I'm saying? What I'm saying is, like, look, I myself, when I was around his age, I thought I'd put in such a sincere effort. I only became Catholic when I was 33. When I was around his age, I thought, man, I'd put, such a colossal effort of search and this, and I have, and I'm at the top of the hill. But I think what you realize is life humbles you, things open up, and then you realize you weren't at the top of the hill and you're at the bottom of a valley, and there's further hills.
Do you know who else was 33 in the Catholic tradition?
St. Augustine.
Jesus.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Well, I think Augustine also. Oh, yeah. No, yeah, I knew that. I'm pretty sure Augustine was was baptized at 33 as well, if I'm not mistaken. Which was a consolation to me. I hope I'm right about that.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So I'm saying is, there's like, dude, like, you didn't don't tell me you like searched intensively for 35 years and now you're like exhausted and disillusioned. I think I can understand why you would feel that way, but realistically speaking, and it's okay to feel that way for a certain period of time. You put in a hearty search and you're kind of exhausted, disillusioned, but in reality, you could do more and you could do it again, and you could, like, it's not the end, and you need to kind of get up and keep looking again. I don't think that you put forward, like you did more than your peers. Certainly, that's why it feels so such a disappointment. There's a lot of but people have religious experiences and conversions at all sorts of different ages and reversions, and life's more complex. Like, in other words, like, read more, experiment with more, go to things like, go on religious pilgrimages, go to like, sacred shrines, venerate relics, go to Eucharistic adoration, like, I don't know, pray the rosary, explore and experiment more when you're ready, revisit old texts that you read when you were younger and you thought you understood so well. And maybe other things will open up that you weren't ready for then. Read new texts that you might have written off or had some presumption about. Like, let the quest go on.
Yeah.
And I think you'll find refreshment from it.
Yeah. I think that's probably a good place to end it. But
yeah,
thanks for hopping on. This is fun. I think I've got a 40-minute debate with a Protestant where he actually beats me for like 80% of it. That might be interesting to go through.
Okay.
So if next time we want to do it, that might be a fun one.
And maybe we could try one of these debates together.
Oh, you want to hop in on some of these atheist ones with me, and then we can
we'll do it.
after.
If there's one you think that is respectful and is good at reasoning and doesn't just take kind of cheap shots and is sincere, has some good will, isn't just kind of totally closed down, so this becomes theater or show. If you think there's one worth it, let's do it.
I mean, these guys go every night. So the breakfast tacos guys, these guys go every night, and like, yeah,
it's funny how there's no women. It's funny how there's no women in here.
The Matt DILLIHUNTY one gets what's funny, there's actually some there's sometimes some Christian women that call into these, actually, sometimes.
Because I would want to talk to someone who's like, look, I actually want to become Christian. I think it's, in many ways, as far as I understand it, beautiful. Like, I wish I believed, and
it's this guy.
Yeah,
this is the most interesting guy to talk to for that, because he used to be like a deconstructed Christian, and then this guy called into the Matt DILLIHUNTY show a couple times and became an atheist based on his conversations with Matt DILLIHUNTY.
Okay, but it looks like his cognition is hyper, sort of
he's a brand new atheist, and he's like actually like philosophically rigorous and very respectful.
Yeah,
if we can get this guy, he's the one to talk to. But even without that guy,
this guy could be worth talking to. It looked like his mode of cognition is like hyper quantification. Like, he'd be the kind of guy to say, like, listen, like, if you want to explore the existence of God, you might need to like read some literature more, explore art more, get out of a mode of just hyper quantification, so to speak. But anyways, yeah. So we have to go. Yeah, we'll talk later. Okay.
All right. Talk later.
Absolutely. Take care. Bye.